This episode of the Beauty Industry podcast was brought to you by Timely, the world's smartest appointment booking software helping beauty and wellness businesses better manage their time, sanity, and ability to generate revenue. Hello and welcome to the Beauty Industry podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Reid. Here we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauty Industry. Today my guest is Dr. Philip Tong, a consultant dermatologist based in Sydney. As a young child, Phil watched his father travel along the patient journey of experiencing eczema. Being in the clinical space, watching dermatologists diagnose and prescribe treatment sparked a passion for the cause and effect of inflammatory skin conditions, which later led him to pursue a career in dermatology. Phil was awarded a fellowship of the Australasian College of Dermatologists after completing his dermatology specialist training in New South Wales as the inaugural Dean's Fellow in Dermatology, a joint initiative with the University of Sydney. A true lover of learning, Phil underwent world-class research and dermatology training at the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, St. Vincent's Hospital, Liverpool and Westmead Hospitals. He also completed his PhD in advanced biomedical imaging and skin immunology at Centenary Institute during this time. Prior to obtaining his specialist qualifications, he also received training in dermatology departments in Perth, Melbourne, as well as in London at the world-renowned St. John's Institute of Dermatology at Guy's and St. Thomas Hospital. Today, the conversation travels through the impact a global pandemic is having on inflammatory skin conditions presenting in patients, the importance of communication and conversations when educating clients on product compliance, and the exciting shift of in-person services to telehealth consultations. Here's Dr. Philip Tong and I for Beauty Industry.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to be here.
Likewise. Thank you so much for joining me this morning and taking out some of your time on what I can imagine is normally a very busy Monday. So I really appreciate you this morning. Look, we start our conversation at the beginning of our guest career because while we love to see the glittery and the shiny of the successful people, we want to know how they first got there and what inspired them to join the beauty industry and aesthetic industry at large. So I'd love to start with you there today.
Well, thank you very much for going back to the very beginning. In fact, my foray into dermatology as a career started when my father actually has dry, sensitive skin resulting in an itchy skin condition called eczema. He needed to see a dermatologist himself in order to get the right treatment. And, eczema in it as a condition doesn't necessarily have dangerous consequences, although in certain circumstances, infected eczema can be quite dangerous for the patient, particularly if it is untreated. But in my father's case, it was just affecting his quality of life. And when I saw him get treated with a dermatologist, I thought that, wow, this person can actually make a huge difference to my dad's quality of life. And that set me off on a journey in terms of trying to find out a bit more about this specialty. Who are what type of specialty does it involve? And, is it the right fit for me?
Interesting. That is so interesting. Do you know what? I always find it so curious because my sister actually, when we were growing up, she had the same thing. She had such chronic eczema. And unfortunately, my parents didn't take her to a dermatologist because it just wasn't so well known back then. But they did just try and wean her off cow's milk, and she was drinking oat milk, and she had to stop eating chocolate. And at Easter time, she could only have those kind of sugary coated almonds happens, unfortunately. But it fascinates me that I didn't go into dermatology. What do you think about that situation made you actually hungry to find out more?
Well, Tamara, I think that's what you're saying is not too uncommon. I think a lot of people receive a lot of advice from different people, and some of those advice are evidence-based and some aren't. And I think that yearning for an evidence-based strategy led me into finding the right mentors and people who were interested in dermatology research. And it was that early days as a junior doctor and young medical student that I had some really fantastic interactions with mentors, both here in Australia and abroad, that really facilitated an interest and a yearning to help out patients, to help out people with skin conditions. And we're not just talking about medical conditions as well. For example, acne, um, redness. I mean, these are all skin conditions that dermatologists treat and help. As in our industry, we help all our patients with these common skin ailments. So it is worthwhile at that point in time investing, the time and the energy to learning more about these, core conditions and common complaints that, one day can lead to breakthrough discoveries.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, did the thought of studying for such a long time ever daunt you or ever scare you?
Oh, absolutely. And I because I did a higher research degree in the form of a PhD, my career was just doubled in terms of its length. And I think some people may see that as you were held back, or if you were delayed in your progression to become a fully qualified dermatologist. And I didn't see it that way because I really had during that period of time, some really great interactions with some fantastic people all over the world. I still have these interactions and collaborations with these people to this day, both in, Singapore, Denmark, the US. So these were, and of course, interstate as well. So these are some lifelong friendships that I'll have forever as a result of this experience. So even though the path was longer, as they say, as per the poet Robert Frost, a path less traveled can be quite fruitful. So I'm very glad I took that path.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like you've been able to take dermatology and really explore some incredible parts of the world with it. What have you found most when you've been traveling and studying and learning along the way?
Well, I think because of my research, I've been able to, and my research goes into, itchy skin and the immune system in the skin later on in my career. It's allowed me to interact with both doctors and scientists from different parts of the world. I've been invited to give seminars in Korea and in Scotland. I've had chances to travel to some of the best centres in the world, such as the one in the UK. I have great friendships from researchers that I've interacted with in the US. I went to his wedding in 2019 before COVID was a major issue, thankfully, and I was able to attend his wedding. So these are friendships that I developed over a decade that I continue to hold very dear to this day. So I think in this industry, it's really important to have relationships, and it is a very small industry, and therefore it's really important that we support each other. Particularly, our industry has gone through a lot of changes in the last year or so. So it's really important that we continue to support each other during this period of time and kind of build and educate each other as well. And that's something that I'm very passionate about as well, which is not just the research, but also the education.
Yeah, likewise. We have very similar alignments there. beauty industry is a business based off support and community and connection for that exact reason, is that, the beauty and aesthetic industry is so small that sometimes we can feel so alone when we are treating clients back to back all day. We don't see any of our peers or any of our team, and then we go home and speak to our loved ones and they don't understand what we're talking about a lot of the time. So that connection is of real importance to me. So I'm glad you align there. I'd love to have a chat with you about inflammation because, as you mentioned, with COVID, it is something that we're seeing so much more prevalent right now in our clients.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, you were interested in inflammation and itchy skin, as you've mentioned, from your dad. But what kind of sparked that interest to keep being such a highlight in your career?
Well, I think you'll be surprised how much the immune system plays a role in dermatology. And when I think of the organ that I'm primarily looking after, the entire repertoire or the entire composition of the immune system is actually within the skin. And I find that really amazing. I find that although we have an immune system, say in our lymph nodes, our spleen, in our blood work, all of that is actually found resident, living and doing its job underneath our skin. And I find that such an amazing but yet unappreciated phenomenon. And of course, for the same reasons that these immune cells protect us from the outside world, these same immune cells can cause problems. For example, in the context of itchy skin or sensitive skin, whereby, for example, if the immune system is exposed to an allergen, for example, it can respond inappropriately and cause inflammation.
Yeah, it sometimes baffles me how this isn't spoken about more in the Western medicine world. I think we are so quick to kind of throw medicines and throw different bits and pieces, but people don't realize just the basics of immunity, and that we can get a lot of these things from food and from lower stress levels and from basic exercise. Does that ever baffle your mind as well?
Well, I think the role of food and exercise, and we should also think about the sun, the UV, all
Mm.
of these environmental and external factors in some way, shape, or form have a role to play in the skin. So, taking a point about diet, I always tell my patients that the human skin is like a donut, and what's on the inside of the donut, which is the gut, is very similar to the skin on the outside of the donut.
Mm.
So we now know that this is, in more scientific terms, this is called the skin-gut axis, and what we put in ourselves has some way, shape, or form a role to play in affecting skin conditions. I was reading recently a review article on the role of diet and the gastrointestinal system and a condition called rosacea, which is a red condition that you get on the face. Now, I think we're probably going a bit beyond the scope of today's discussion, but that just goes to show how much diet can potentially play a role in skin conditions.
Mm.
And let's not mention, the role of, say, having a good diet, with lots of micronutrients, omega-3 fatty acids, can potentially play a role in achieving healthy skin.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Has COVID shifted, or perhaps a better word is increased, the inflammatory skin conditions that you're seeing in patients at the moment?
Yes, I'm seeing a lot more hand dermatitis.
Ah.
So hand dermatitis is probably a lot of it's due to a pre-existing uh, risk of developing dried skin. So they were probably genetically predisposed to develop eczema-prone skin. And then subsequent to that, with the use of hand washing and alcohol-based hand sanitizers, that really dried the skin out. And I'm seeing a lot of that these days. I'm seeing a lot of facial dermatitis as well, and eyelid dermatitis. And that's probably because of overwashing the skin as well, being overzealous with their skincare. But these are all very treatable conditions, and with the right advice and the right treatments, these patients can get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Does it concern you at all? I mean, it's great for business, let's be honest, but does it concern you at all the longevity of, a virus hanging around and the overuse of all of these chemicals being so aggressive and constantly washing and stripping and antibacterializing the skin so much that the skin is in such an inflamed and compromised state for perhaps longer than it's ever been before?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I want my patients to stay safe and
Mm.
to do the right things, like frequently hand washing, the appropriate use of hand sanitization, use of a mask. But yes, I mean, through my various opportunities, I've used this period of time to educate my patients and wider audience about how they can modify some of their behavior and some of their habits to ensure that they don't get some of the complications from, say, using these products on the skin. There's, at the end of the day, the skin is meant to be a physical barrier at first and foremost, and it effectively does work as that. And I think as long as you maintain that barrier, then that shouldn't be a problem. It's only when that barrier isn't maintained and it becomes disrupted, that's when these conditions like hand dermatitis comes and the skin becomes quite inflamed and itchy and uncomfortable.
After the break, Phil shares with us how he continues to educate his clients through the relationship of communication and why he's excited about the future of tech innovation in a service-based industry. But first, a word from today's beauty partner. Community, you know all too well how pro I am about all things online booking and working smarter, not harder in 2020, and our friends at Timely help you to do just that. Timely is a powerful booking and business management software for businesses of any size and ambition. Designed to help you save hours on admin, deliver exceptional client experience, establish a much-loved brand and grow your revenue with over 500 software updates every year, Timely is always on a mission to help you get the best from your business. Timely works beautifully with Tyro, Xero, QuickBooks, MailChimp, Square, Google Calendar, and more. So why not join over 40,000 global Timely customers today? If you've been thinking about making the switch from pen and paper or want to test a new salon software system, visit www.gettimely.com to start a free 14-day trial. The Timely team has an exclusive offer for the listeners of today's episode where you get 50% off Timely for your first 2 months. It's such an incredible offer by using the promo code Tamara20. That's Tamara and the number 20. Thank you so much to the team at Timely for making this episode possible. And now back to Phil. You mentioned there the word education with relation to your clients. We in the beauty and aesthetic industry try to educate our clients as much as possible through consultation and diagnosis and prescription. I'm wondering if you have any tips or tricks or, how you start that education conversation with your patients, because sometimes people are willing and other times people aren't so willing to listen.
I mean, that's a really great point that you raise. I think our industry, we have a unique ability to connect quite quickly with our patient clients. In the beauty industry, you often spend considerable time with your clients, and that forms a therapeutic relationship. And with that therapeutic relationship, transfer of information by way of education can happen. I like to write things down because a lot of the time that when they come see me, it's a lot of information. There's a lot of general advice that is often said. There's a lot of prescription medication that can be prescribed in certain circumstances, and a list of things to avoid, for example. So hence writing things down for the patient or client can be very useful, and also taking a no blame approach. They're not at fault for presenting to you today. It's just happened, and it's important to just get on to the treatment and management of their skin, and just be very understanding the fact that it's a long-term, it potentially could be a long-term problem, and therefore it does take a bit of, I often try to break up the consultation with maybe say, this is a short-term plan, and then why don't we have a look at things in say 4 weeks time, and then at that time we can discuss something a bit more long-term to keep your skin stable and at bay.
Yes, I love that so much. That's such great advice because as therapists and as estheticians, we know so much about what we're saying, and we can say the same thing sometimes 10, 20 times a day, and it's just water off a duck's back for us because that's our mother tongue. We know all of these different languages and articulations, but when you're saying it to a client or a patient for the first time, it can sometimes not land. And so when you're overwhelming them with all of this information, for example, if you're talking about inflammation, you could be talking about cortisol, you could be talking about T cells and mast cells, and you're giving all of this information, and it's so natural to us to have that conversation. But you can see it in the client's eyes. Sometimes they kind of just glaze over and they distance themselves from the conversation. So to have that written down, I really, really love. And also, as you mentioned there, to step it out in almost providing them a treatment pathway, I guess, for lack of a better term, to say, okay, we are here, we're a step A. This is what step B looks like in 4 weeks' time. But in the future, this is what step C to E looks like.
Yeah.
Do you try and, create that kind of long-term plan and relationship for your clients in that respect?
Absolutely, because in my situation, and you probably as a therapist, you'd be able to bring them back a lot more frequently. But I can't bring them back say every month or for review. For the next 12 months, it's just not practical. But certainly, I think providing them with a short-term plan for say the next 4 weeks, and then with the vision of developing something more long term that they can actually do themselves. And I think that's what I like them to do. And in your scenario, and often when I'm talking aesthetics with my patients, like for example, this is what we do here at the clinic. This is the treatment that we'll provide. And then this is your home treatment that you need to work on. This is your homework. And I think that makes them more personally invested in the process. And then when they come see you again, then they generally feel that they've participated in the outcome. And obviously the outcome's been a very positive one because your treatments have obviously helped, and they're doing the homework themselves, whether it's inflammation or pigment or redness, to help get their skin to where they want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it is important that we understand the relationship of the therapist, the esthetician, the dermatologist, and the client and the patient, because we both have to come to the party. And, it's not enough for the treating therapist to do all of the work and give all of the advice and then the client to go home and not take that on. So I love what you're referencing there is giving the client a little bit of responsibility, because if they don't change anything, 1 hour with us a month is not going to change anything either.
Yeah, I completely agree, and the same would happen in my scenario. If they don't use the prescription creams that I prescribed, or if they don't follow the treatment course, it's very difficult for me to achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve, and what I want to achieve, and then you don't have a very happy client. And in our industry, I think it's really important that we try to have happy patients and happy clients because. I think that there is a lot of opportunities where they can lose faith very easily, and we have to kind of maintain that therapeutic relationship that I was saying before by either through education, empathy, being very clear with instructions, and think of it as a partnership.
Yeah, because sometimes when our clients come to see us, we're at the end of the line. We're their
Mhm.
last stop. You know, they might have tried all of the word of mouth products from family and friends, and maybe they've gone to see a regular GP. Maybe they've done a little bit of Dr. Google research on their own, and they
Yeah.
might have tried to do this for, 5, 10, even longer years until they finally come to see us, and we're the last resort. So, I love what you've said there about empathy and compassion as well.
Yeah, I think as a business owner, I mean, we certainly for me, the business is my reputation, and if say business owners and estheticians and therapists think of that in a very similar way, and I can understand not everyone is a business owner, but think of it as your reputation, and your clients will follow you wherever you go. I think if you develop that rapport, I think, for even the junior therapists out there who are listening, I think it's really important that you work hard in your job and demonstrate a caring and empathetic approach, and the fact that your reputation will grow if you build a quality practice or a quality clientele. And then things spread by word of mouth. Although there are traditional means of advertising and things like that, nothing beats, I believe, word of mouth, in terms of you delivering quality care, and then people recognizing that, and then as a result of that, people are telling their friends and family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more there. I'm interested to know, at what point in your career did you think about or have that light bulb moment of going into business ownership, and why?
Oh, it was by chance, really. I had an opportunity to lease some rooms from a colleague of mine, and um, at that point in time, I was actually already working for other people, and my wife happens to also be a nurse. So we started the practice together, and from then on, we had an opportunity to then move in with a senior colleague of mine in Bondi Junction, and we came here in November 19, and we've been going from strength to strength. Again, just building on the reputation of just delivering a quality care. I think we in the location that I'm practicing here in Bondi Junction, we see a lot of families. So we maybe start by seeing the grandparents, and then the grandparents bring their children, and then their grandchildren, and then we end up seeing the entire family within
Wow.
6 months or something like that. So I think it just comes by providing a good service, and knowing that what you're and helping patients get better. And I think with that, if you have that in mind, and I think in time your reputation, your practice will grow. That's worked for me so far. And yes, it's very daunting. There's a lot of hard work after hours and weekends, and paperwork, and all of that business owners will all know about. And especially during this period of time where there was a dip in terms of, and there was probably that some of us actually had to close
Hmm.
because of mandatory closures enforced by the government. So it was a very difficult time for our industry, to be honest. Um, so it's not easy. It's not easy.
No, it's certainly not been easy. And I nearly said this year, but we're already in 2021 now. It still feels like 2020, doesn't it, with all of the craziness that's going on? But
That's right.
it was a really, really difficult year for our industry. And I'm sure not only in the skin conditions, but mentally and physically, and obviously financially, and our industry is going to be impacted for such a period of time afterwards. I'm wondering, what's the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way so far?
Well, I think the ability to innovate and adapt very quickly to the changing scenario, and I know a number of clinics have changed to a telehealth model as well,
Mm.
and some of the estheticians have consulted via video conferencing. So, um, and they've been able to provide. I know a lot of your treatments do require the client to come in, but there are some things that can be done through a video conference, and care boxes, if you like, can be sent out to clients and things like that. So I'm aware that those that can adapt have probably weathered the storm a lot better than those that have tried to stick to the traditional model. And it's not easy to change a business model that has been working for you for quite some time. But what happened last year, and probably to a certain extent this year, is still unprecedented. And I guess time will tell what's the long-lasting impact of this. I think it will change the way we practice dermatology. That certainly, potentially in the future, we may see more telehealth services increasing. And I'm not sure whether the beauty industry has that same vision moving forward. There may be more online services provided. I understand a number of online platforms are providing tailored skincare based on a number of questionnaires and the responses from those questionnaires. So it's a very, I think if you take it as a very exciting period for innovation, then you look at the glass half full. And I think that's probably from a mental health perspective, a lot more healthy way of thinking and moving forward than the glass half empty.
Yes. And I think for us as estheticians, as people who physically provide a service, be that a facial or a skin needling or, IPL pigment rejuvenation,
Mm.
we have always thought of the treatment being the be all and end all, which is going to provide the client with the result. But I think, if anything, this time doing online consultations and even just seeing the incredible transformations of skin conditions during COVID, during lockdowns, when we couldn't treat just based on that retail prescription factor and compliance of the client, it has really shifted the whole perspective of estheticians, which I love, because when we're a service-based industry, there's only so many clients we can treat at any one time. Whereas if you've got telehealth, if you've got online consultations going all day, every day, you can reach a much wider audience and you can reach more of an audience. So it is quite an exciting time. You're right.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even though you can't necessarily do your treatments, obviously because of video conferencing, you can provide advice, especially with patients with an impaired skin barrier, skin inflammation. Remind them of not to overwash. Make sure you can review their products over video conferencing. You can get them to show you what products they're using, and you can advise them how to best use them, in what order, what products not to use, what to swap it out with. So there are lots of avenues, as you say, to move forward in this space if people are prepared to innovate and explore this online space.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'd love to explore your relationship because you have an ambassadorship with Dermaveen Carmexa. How did this partnership come along for you?
Well, I think it came about through my work in skin inflammation and my academic work. And they initially approached me to develop resources for healthcare professionals, mainly general practitioners, on managing eczema-prone skin, advising patient clients on the quantities of, say, moisturizers to use. And it then resulted in a number of other educational opportunities. For example, educating the company on skin conditions and how in dermatology we manage these skin conditions. And at the end of the day, it was a partnership that I was quite happy to be involved with, because the brand has been in dermatology for a number of decades now, and it's synonymous with kind of affordable quality skincare. And that's something that's really important for my patients. As you heard, I see families, and therefore it's really important that you have the family and budget in mind to make sure that they can use the treatment and get the treatment done in as prescribed. And I often, not to say that, and the thing is actually it's a very quality product. and the fact that they are able to deliver that at such an affordable price amazes me. But certainly, I'm very happy to recommend that, especially to young families with young children, for example, with dry, sensitive skin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge barrier to entry for our industry is that clients think it's going to cost me so much money if I go there and see it. And I think that's often why people put off visiting, either a skin therapist or esthetician or dermatologist for such a long period of time, is that they're worried about the impacts. And if I go there, they'll ask me to spend this much money, which just snowballs into such a large amount. So being that something is so readily available and accessible and also too affordable is a really good unique selling point.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I often recommend patients use, even half a kilo of moisturizer every month. And when you're kind of prescribing those amounts of moisturizers to patients, they kind of, one, they gasp, and then they kind of realize, once I actually demonstrate on their skin, this is the quantity of moisturizer that they need, that, it needs to be practical for the patient, and you need to design something that's practical for the patient. No point recommending treatments which are either impractical or out of their budget. So for that reason, these products are quite good for consumers.
Absolutely. Now, last question for you, keeping in mind that glass half full strategy going into 2021, what excites you the most? I mean, we've had such challenges in 2020. We're all trying to see the positive side. We're holding on to 2021 to be a better year. Is there anything that's in the pipeline for you or in the future that you've got your eye set on?
As an industry, I'm looking forward to the transformation to into the more digital space, the integration of personalized skincare into, I guess, a esthetician's or a dermatologist's armamentarium towards assisting our patient clients. I really like the concept of that. I think the digital space is the area to watch, especially when it comes to telehealth. I think there's a lot of opportunities if you're willing to grasp them and willing to be flexible and take a chance. But yes, I think 2021 is a year to look forward to in terms of rebuilding and re-engaging with clients and kind of jump-starting the year on a good note.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Phil. It has been an absolute pleasure to be able to chat dermatology with you. And I can hear your clinic in the background must be banging down your door, ready for you with some patients out in the waiting room there.
Well, I hope it hasn't been too disruptive, but thank you very much for your time. And this was a really enjoyable interview. I had fantastic questions, and thank you again. And hopefully an opportunity may arise in the future for me to be on a podcast again.
Absolutely. We would love that. Rounding out an important piece of advice Phil mentioned in today's conversation, which I think is quite timely when beginning a new year or any time across the year really. There are two ways to look at situations we're dealt with, that be a skin condition, business task, or everyday encounter we have. That is either to respond or to react. Reacting is sitting in a space of why me and often to blame others or the things around us, versus responding, which is taking a considered and measured approach and also a deep breath, and to look at the situation from an external perspective and ask ourselves, how can I best move forward from here? It's important to remember that often when clients visit us, they are in this respond or react phase too, in particular when facing inflammatory skin conditions. So best to approach every client with empathy for the condition and to provide them with clear education and communication to help assist them. If you have loved today's conversation and perhaps found it insightful, please make sure you share this episode with your industry friends and colleagues, or of course show us how you're listening over on socials by tagging at Dr. Phil Tong, us at Beauté Industry, and myself at Tamara Reed Beauté, so that we can continue to bring these episodes to you. Until next time, stay connected.